All right, our next step in getting this painting to look like this painting is painting in the darks. So when you're ready to do your final, you're going to do this independently, and you'll look at whatever picture you are working from, and you're going to identify where the dark areas are in the picture, right? So when we look at this photograph, you can see that the front three petals are pretty dark, and this back petal is pretty dark, and this petal is pretty dark. There's some darkness on this petal, there's darkness here, and there's darkness here, and those darker values are what I'm talking about for this step in your project. So what we're going to be doing is painting just those areas a darker purpley red, so mostly red, but a little bit of a little magenta in there. And then we're also going to add some green on the stem. So let's go ahead and get started here. Whoa, my brush is all the way over there. All right, so here we go. In order to do this part of the project, you need to activate the red and the green and the blue. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take some water. I'm using the little brush again because it's such a small painting. Guys, it's just so little. I'm just going to keep using the little brush. When you do your final, you will probably use a big brush for this because the area will be larger and it'll make brush strokes. And they'll be really visible and kind of yucky looking. So I've activated my red and my green and my blue, and I'm going to start by bringing the red down. So I will bring the red down, and it needs to be a little bit brighter than, a lot brighter than it was for this wimpy color here. And then I'm going to add some water to it. Okay, I'm going to give it a little test. That's probably good. I'll test it again after I put the blue in. All right, now I'm rinsing off my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and bring the green down. I do not need a lot of green because the area that I'm using green on is very, very small. I'm not even going to put any water in that. I think that'll be just fine. So I squeegeed that off so that the green stays in there, and then when I wash off my brush, it doesn't make the paint water real dirty. Wipe off my brush a little bit, and then now I'm going to get the blue. There's not a lot of blue in my palette, so I have to kind of smoosh around the outside to get it out, but it really doesn't matter because I'm not using a lot of blue for what I'm doing, and so it just doesn't really matter. All right, and then now I'm rinsing off my brush because I want to control how much blue I put in the red. So I rinsed off my brush and then I wiped it off, and now I'm going to take a little bit of blue and mix it into the red. Okay. And so in that way it should make it darker and a little bit more magenta. So let's test it next to the other color. That's pretty nice, but I think it needs a little more red in it so that it'll be a little bit brighter. I don't want it this bright, but I want it a little bit brighter than that. So I rinsed off my brush and I'm just going to put a little bit of red in it. Now, whether or not you need to depends on what your paint looks like. So you have to use your best art tool, your brain, to figure out if it needs to change. All right, that's pretty good. This is what we're looking for. It's kind of a dark tone. It's going to be much, much darker than the pink that's on there. So I set my reference picture right next to my my little painting because I need to make sure I'm looking at it while I'm painting, so everything has to stay really close so that I can see it. Still have my paper towel in my non-dominant hand and my paintbrush in my dominant hand, and I'm ready to start painting in the darks. We're going to start painting in the darks from the left to the right because I'm right-handed. You'll go the other direction if you are left-handed. So for this, what I'm going to do is dip my paintbrush in my paint, make sure that it's fully saturated, and then I will wipe it on the side like this because that will make it pointy. So I just kind of gently go around like this and then make sure that my brush has gotten as pointy as I can. Now starting over here, this petal right here is this petal. Okay, we didn't do this one, so it's this petal. So I'm going to go into here and starting at the edge, I'm going to paint down just like this, and then get a little bit of paint down in here. Okay, I'm not going to do this one right now because that one is too wet and they will bleed together and I don't want that, so I'm going to do this one next. Dip my brush in the paint, wipe it off on the sides. This one I'm going to paint the entire thing this darker tone. Gently, gently, gently. Oh, he's so pretty. Okay, so I painted him all in, and then I'm going to do the whole third front petal. So we're just going to go down. When I want it to be smooth, I paint using the edge of the paintbrush, like that, to get in to the side so that I'll have a nice smooth line. Now this is lumpy here, so I'm going to absorb some of the paint off my paintbrush and dry it up. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to come over here and paint the little tips, right? You can see there's a little tip of darkness over here, so I'm just dipping my brush in the paint a little bit so that it has a little bit of tone on it, but it's not too dark. And I'll just gently paint in here. I'm going to show you how to blend these in just a sec, but we let it go ahead and dry a little bit before we do that. All right, so we'll do that, and then now I'm going to come over here and do this little end too, kind of the same thing on the end of that. Oh, look how nice you are. You look so good. Oh, he's so cute. Got that darkness in there. Now I'm going to go do this back petal here. The back petal you can see is kind of transparent, and you can see a little bit of the other petal that was behind it reflected on it, so I'm going to do that little shape. So dipping my brush in my paint that I've mixed up, wiping it on the side, and I'm going to go about right here. That looks good. Make that shape. And then go over, right? That's pretty nice. Just gently using the very end of the brush so that it's nice and pointy, and then going through here. You will need to do this much slower than I am doing it. Okay, just like that, and then now that feels pretty dry. You can tell if your paint is too wet to paint on if it's cold or shiny. So if you're looking at it and it's really shiny, then it's real wet and you shouldn't paint on it yet. If it's very cold, then you shouldn't paint on it yet. That's too wet and it will bleed. If it's a little cold and you're doing something like this, it's probably okay. I'm gonna go in and do the end and get a little darkness to cover up where I painted over to hide the mistake. All right, now we're going to go and do this last little petal up here. Most of him is dark, but not the whole thing. So I'll go in over here, paint him in like that. I'm going to go down here, paint this guy in. And then I'm going to paint in underneath here. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to blend some of these awkward edges. All right, so what I'm going to do to blend the edges is just use water. And I will do. You can do this after it's dry, or you can do it while it's drying, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm going to show you it for after it's dry, because that I think is where we're going to be at and how it works. So I'm washing off my brush, and I'm going to dry it a little bit, but not all the way. And I'm going to use just a wet brush to pull this color down a little bit. Okay, and so I'm just gently painting on it, and it pulls the color down and will blend it a little bit. If you're really careful, you can do this while it's wet. Most of you will do it while it's dry and have more success. And then I'm going to do the next one. Now, your water needs to be pretty clean before you do this on the light pink tone, right? Because if your water is really dark, then it will make your painting whatever color the water is. My water is like a super duper light purple, but I think that it's working just fine. So I'm just going around to all of the edges that I've made that are kind of harsh, and I'm smoothing them out and blending. And I'm still kind of doing the same thing that we were doing before, where I paint a little on one and then I wait and let it dry a little bit before I go and paint the next one. Do you see how this smooths out the harsh edge? I want to make sure that my harsh edges are smoothed out so that I will have a nice value transition. And it might look like I'm seesawing back and forth and scrubbing, but I'm not. I'm just like painting it a little bit and waking it back up. I'm almost done with this part. I need a little more water. Put this guy in here. And it blends them in so nice. Hey there, buddy. Oh, look how nice you look. You're so cute. All right, and I'm gonna absorb some of this paint down here because I don't want it to dry that wet. Sometimes when you leave bubbles of water on there to dry, it dries and then it spreads, and that's not what we want. All right, so this is good for the dark undertones. I'm gonna give you just a second to do that, and then we're gonna do the stem. Okay, so now it's time for the stem, and in my palette, I have a green and then a little bit of blue. So my brush is nice and clean. I'm going to take a little blue and put it in the green, just because, you know, I don't like to just accept whatever colors they've given me up here. I love to mix my own. And what I'm going to do is just paint a stripe down, leaving a little bit of the yellow showing on the side. So I'm going to zoom in really close as I can, so that I can show you what that looks like. Okay. Is there any closer? Nope, that's as close as we can get. So I will use just the little end of the brush. Make sure that you wipe it on the side so that it's as pointy as it can be. And we're just going to paint in. My face is very close, like that, leaving a little edge visible. Okay, and I've got a puddle at the bottom, so I'm putting my brush on my little paper towel. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, and that's it. So there's your darks.